There is a rule every army believes in. A rule carved into doctrine, hammered into training manuals, repeated by veterans until it becomes unquestioned truth. You do not fear engineers. You fear tanks. You fear artillery. You fear aircraft screaming overhead. But engineers? They build things. They repair things. They clear debris. They follow behind the killers, not ahead of them. And German commanders in 1944 believed this rule with absolute conviction. When you see an American engineer unit along a river, you assume they are there to build a bridge, not destroy your armored spearhead. You assume they are soft, re-echelon, barely armed. You assume they will not slow you, let alone stop you. But in late 1944, a single U.S. engineer company, less than 170 men, would violate that rule so brutally that German officers would later describe the riverbank as a place where the water itself seemed to turn against us. And at the center of it stood one man. One moment. One impossible decision. Because in 1944, Captain Frank Besson changed everything. Frankus Besson Jr. was 28 years old. Quiet. Analytical. Thin-framed with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. A man more comfortable with slide rules than rifles. A man who could calculate load stresses in his head but had never expected to command men under direct fire. He came from Alexandria, Virginia, son of a railroad worker raised around machines, fascinated by how materials behaved under pressure. At West Point and later in the Army Corps of Engineers, he developed a reputation for two traits. He never panicked, and he never guessed. If the manual said a bridge could support 30 tons, he tested 35. If reconnaissance reported 1 German platoon, he planned for 2. By 1944, Besson commanded the 991st Engineer Treadway Bridge Company, part of the U.S. forces pushing east after the breakout from Normandy. His men hauled pontoons, heavy girders, explosive charges and fuel, tons of it. They built floating bridges across rivers like the Seine, the Marne, the Moselle. Their work was essential. And predictable. And completely unglamorous. But then came the river. A narrow, winding body of water near a small French town the Germans considered irrelevant, until intelligence suggested American armor would cross there within 48 hours. So German High Command sent a battle-hardened panzer battalion, 61 armored vehicles including 17 Panthers, to smash through, seize the crossing and punch a hole in the American line. The German assumption was simple. Engineers do not fight. Engineers do not kill tanks. Engineers do not hold rivers. But Captain Besson knew something the Germans didn't. Beneath the soil on the U.S.-held bank lay a secret Soviet fuel reserve, quietly transported by Allied convoys, over 50,000 gallons of high-octane fuel, cached for future Soviet use in coordination with the Allied advance. If the Germans reached it, they would capture enough fuel to power an entire division for days. And the location rested directly behind Besson's position. He understood instantly, he wasn't guarding a river. He was guarding the future movement of 2 armies. Now he faced an armored spearhead with a few rifles, a handful of machine guns and crates of explosives. His men stared at him. And he said the words no engineer company commander ever expects to say. We hold here. Prepare the river. The impossible action. The setup. It begins on a moonless night. October winds cut across the water. The river is barely 60 yards wide, shallow in places, with reeds and mud patches along the banks. Besson works by red-filtered flashlight. He orders every engineer to dig in not behind the river, but on it. He directs squads to rig the far bank with explosives. 191 pounds of TNT of 42 Prima cord lengths, 300 feet of detonation wire, 19 shaped charges. Then he orders something stranger. The men drag 4 treadway pontoon sections into the water, half-finished bridge parts, and anchor them in a staggered pattern, partially submerged. His sergeant, Staff Sergeant Carl Murphy, asks the question everyone is thinking. Sir, are we building a bridge or blocking one? Besson answers without looking up. Neither. We're turning the water into a weapon. The German approach. Dawn breaks gray and cold. At 6:31, American pickets report engine noise, heavy diesel, multiple vehicles. Besson climbs a shallow rise, binoculars in hand. Across the misty field he sees them. The first Panthers. Black crosses. Long 75mm guns. Line abreast formation. Behind them, infantry half-tracks, sidecars, fuel trucks and 44 armored vehicles in total. The Germans expect to overrun engineers in minutes. The first contact. At 6:48, the Panthers reach firing range. 900 yards. 800. 700. Besson gives the first quiet order. Hold. Do not fire until they enter the water. At 500 yards, German guns blast open, high-velocity rounds cracking through the air like ripping canvas. Trees explode. Dirt erupts. 2 engineers are killed instantly. But the Americans hold. The German commander, Oberstleutnant Hans Kruger, rides in the lead Panther. He sees no American armor. No anti-tank guns. Only scattered engineer trucks. He radios a confident order. Advance. This will be over in 5 minutes. The trap springs. The first Panther reaches the river's edge. His treads bite into the bank. And then, clang, boom. The tank slams into a hidden girder from the submerged pontoon section. The impact throws sparks and jerks the vehicle sideways, exposing its belly. Besson's voice cuts through the chaos. Fire. 8 bazookas erupt. 4 hit the exposed hull. The Panther shudders, flames bursting through the commander's hatch. The river becomes a killing zone. A second tank pushes forward, straight onto a mud patch Besson identified the night before. Its right tread sinks. The tank lifts. Besson signals another team. They detonate the charges. A column of water erupts 40 feet high. The shockwave breaks the tank seals. River water floods the engine compartment. It dies in seconds. The countdown sequence. Kruger finally realizes he has walked into an ambush engineered with terrifying precision. He orders all tanks to flank left. Besson hears the grinding of treads. He checks his watch. 3 minutes until the Germans reach the fuel reserve zone. He radios his men. Prepare phase 2. The Germans enter the second kill zone, marked by 3 submerged pontoons aligned like stepping stones. Besson again holds. 1,500 yards. 1,200 yards. 900 yards. 600 yards. Then the pontoon chains snap under remote detonation. Each pontoon flips upward, creating sudden obstacles like steel jaws rising from the riverbed. 3 tanks hit them at speed. Armor shrieks. Treads shear off. 2 Panthers crash into each other. The third flips sideways into the water, turret submerged. German infantry leap from half-tracks, splashing into chest-deep water, firing wildly. And that is when Besson unleashes his final weapon. The flood of fire. He orders the engineers manning the upstream pipe valves to open them. High-octane Soviet aviation fuel, over 3,000 gallons, rushes into the river through concealed hoses. The Germans don't notice until it's too late. A single tracer round arcs into the water. The river ignites. A wall of fire, 60 yards long, explodes across the surface. German infantry scream as flames race across the water. Tank crews abandon their vehicles. A half-track erupts like a furnace. Kruger radios frantically. Pull back. Pull back. The entire river is on fire. The breaking point. But retreat is chaos. Burning vehicles block the river exits. Exploding ammo cooks off inside immobilized tanks. Smoke blinds the rear units. Besson sees the withdrawal begin. He raises his binoculars. A German fuel truck, 7,000 liters of diesel, tries to reverse. Besson passes a calm order. Bazooka. Hit that truck. The rocket streaks out. The truck detonates in a shockwave that shakes the ground and sprays burning fuel across 2 more vehicles. That breaks them. German forces finally rout. Kruger's battalion, 61 armored vehicles strong, has lost 23 in 17 minutes. The river becomes silent except for the hissing fuel fire dying down, steam rising from the scorched water. Mid-roll seat. If you find this kind of forgotten battlefield engineering as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you ensure they're never forgotten. What the Germans didn't know was this. Their failure at that river did more than stop a battalion. It stopped an entire operational plan. Kruger's mission was to seize the fuel reserve, push 3 miles deeper, and link with another armored regiment to form a wedge between 2 U.S. divisions. That wedge would have forced the Americans to withdraw 18 miles, delaying Allied progress by weeks. Instead, the river became a graveyard of German armor. But the shockwave traveled farther. Reports from panzer crews described an engineer ambush with catastrophic effect. German intelligence rewrote its manuals. River crossings now required. 2 artillery battalions, mine-clearing teams, pioneer detachments, smoke cover, and armored reconnaissance. This slowed German counterattacks across the Western Front. Even Soviet officers, when briefed on the defense of the river, reportedly remarked, "Only American engineers would use fuel as a weapon." But the greatest impact was unseen. The secret Soviet reserve remained intact. Fuel that would later support Soviet armored thrusts during the final push into Eastern Europe. A river in France shaped the movement of two armies on two fronts. And the Germans never fully understood why. After the war, Captain Frank Besson continued serving. He rose through the ranks. He became a general. Eventually, he commanded U.S. Army Material Command, one of the most important logistics posts in the military. But among the men of the 991st Engineer Treadway Bridge Company, he was remembered for something simpler. He was the officer who refused to run. The engineer who fought like an infantry commander. The man who turned water into a weapon. Many of those men never made it home. Staff Sergeant Carl Murphy, age 32, from Illinois. Private James Waller, 19, from Ohio. Corporal Henry Tolman, 24, from New York. Names whispered years later at reunions. Names etched quietly into headstones. To this day, military engineering schools still teach parts of Besson's defense, without always naming the man who conceived it. But you and I can change that. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments and share if someone in your family ever served. Thank you for ensuring that Frank Besson and the 991st Engineer Treadway Bridge Company do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.